Double Page Spread is brought to you by the fine people at DCBS, the Discount Comic Book Service. You want to get your trades half off? Go pre-order them over at dcbservice.com. They have all the newest Marvel and DC and Image books. They've got every independent title you could ever hope for, so go check them out as well as their sister site at InStock Trades. Also, our dear friends at Black Phoenix Alchemy Lab, who offer many decadent, gothic, romantic fragrances. They have a new line called Unbound, and it is a perfume fundraiser for Planned Parenthood, NARAL, and the Center for Reproductive Rights. So a portion of all of these sales goes to help those tremendous woman-helping services. They have a scent called I Sit and Sew Perfume Oil, which is described as silk threads unraveling, sheer vanilla and violet leaf with jasmine sambac, white musk, and tea leaf. Oh, and they have a new beard oil that smells like a solid, steadfast blend of patchouli, smoked vanilla husk, ambergris accord, and tawny oud. So definitely go check them out. And please, support Double Page Spread. Give us a little shout out on the iTunes and the comments and the stars or whatever. Buy some of the merch over at our Threadless store. We've got t-shirts, we've got shower curtains, we've got duvet covers, we've got all of that stuff right there. The link is right there in the show notes. So I appreciate every single one of you, and I hope that you really appreciate this episode and this wonderful chat with Richard Pace. Hey there, welcome back to Double Page Spread. I'm your host, Miss Wendi Freeman, and tonight I am joined by artist Richard Pace. How are you doing, buddy?
Not too bad. How about yourself?
I'm doing great. And you're perhaps best known for your work penciling books like Pitt and New Warriors. And you have a
So,
tremendous resume. You've done so much coloring and inking and penciling and all kinds of stuff.
well, thank you. Yeah, that was the stuff I did primarily in the '90s,
Mm-hmm.
and when I did my first stab at comics, then I left for over a decade to do other things, illustration, storyboarding, concept art, all that stuff, all that wonderful stuff. I learned a lot from, and I also taught a fair amount during that time at an art college up here in
Nice.
Canada. So yeah, and I realized I had still comics left in me to draw, and I came back.
That's wonderful. Well, welcome back.
Well, thank you.
So tell me, how was it working for Image in the 90s?
Well, I was actually there's a few weird things that happened at Image. Image started when I was really just breaking in, working at Marvel. So I got to be on the sideline seeing all these superstars launch these incredibly high-selling books, and most of these guys had no business background at all. And and even without any experience of myself, I could see them making mistake after mistake after mistake. And so that was kind of interesting. And then my good friend Dale Kuhn was doing Pitt, and he's slow, and he got slower the more precious he became about the work. And that's almost like a double-edged sword of success. He spent more time on Pitt 1 than he ever spent on an issue of the Hulk, which had made him a celebrity. So he put more time into the second issue, then more time into the third issue, then more time into the fourth issue, and the issues started coming out further and further apart. And without the support system of a publisher, everything had to be done by Dale or somebody he brought on board to do it. And so at one point, Dale liked my work, which was flattering as hell because I was horrible. And he asked me to draw a little backup story that ended up getting used. I think it's something called Pit One Half.
Mm-hmm.
It was a origin story for this Lupe Silva werewolf character. And Dale's then partner in Pitt, Brian Houghton, who got the job because I think he was Dale's friend, and Dale's pretty open about that, had no real writing experience. So for an 8-page story, he wrote about 30 pages of content. And it was even hard to decipher that. So I asked if I could just reformat the script so it made a little bit more sense. And Dale went, yeah, sure, do it, do it. So I wrote it up, gave it to Dale, and he was like, oh, you can write. And so after drawing that story, he asked me to write and draw a Pitt one shot, which was wonderful because I mean it was just nothing but big monsters and violence, everything the 12-year-old me wanted to draw in comics. And after that, Dale brought me on board to write the main book, and at that point he was actually moving away from Image because there was politics going on there because that goes hand in hand with people who don't know how to run a business. And so Dale struck out on his own, started Full Bleed, and it was really interesting to see all the things that were like swirling around Dale, like meeting with Steven Spielberg and all this movie and media stuff. And I'm like, wow, I'm so happy I'm not there. And I was encountering people who were like, and this is you know what? I think a better example of this is one time I was having dinner with Sam Keith and a whole bunch of other people after a convention, and this is at the height of the Max.
Mm-hmm. Like when it
And
had the
Sam,
TV show and stuff.
the TV show was happening, the
Mm-hmm.
book was still selling really well, everything was happening, and Sam was this really nice guy, and we're getting along really well, and we're talking really well. And it was getting near the end of the night. We had to go back because another day of the convention was coming up. And he goes, I really like you, but I don't think we should exchange information. I went, oh, okay. He goes, yeah, I don't know if I can have any new friends anymore. And I could see in his face that was the negative part of the fame of being a star at Image. Everyone saw these people as accesses to celebrity and money.
Mm.
And I got hit by that because I was working with Dale. People thought I was their doorway to get to Dale. And if they got to Dale, they could make tons of money.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was interesting seeing all this insane, unbridled visual creativity going around. But it was also really interesting to see the level of greed from people who really didn't have any talent. They just saw these, like the original seven and I guess the next wave of people that Dale would be a part of, as avenues to making money. It was very sobering.
Yeah, that's crazy. And also it just amazes me how like Savage Dragon is still going on.
That's an act of will. Eric Larson is. I was supposed to do a She Dragon miniseries,
Mm-hmm.
and I was talking to Eric Larson for a while, back and forth, working on the story of this, and he was really worried about the sales at that time because sales were dropping really dramatically after the initial. And a lot of people, when they talk about the big boom of the '90s, they don't realize it really didn't last that long. It only lasted a few years. And it was just this insane collector's market. People who weren't really reading the comics, they were just buying them because they thought they could make money. So Eric Larson was worried about the sales on She Dragon. He made a little comment saying, was like, I just don't know if your name's going to move any books. I was like, oh. So I took on some other high profile work, which slowed down She Dragon because I figured, well, I'll raise the celebrity market. And he goes, well, hold it. No, you took on other stuff. I said, well, yeah, you said, you wanted me to be more high profile. He's like, oh, well, that's going to take longer. Let's just forget about it.
Oh.
And I realized after the fact, I was like, you know what? If I just put my head down and drew it, Eric would have published it. Even if it didn't sell very well, he would have published it because he just loves the comics. And that's the interesting personality spectrum you got at Image. You got people who really know the business, like you got what Robert Kirkman's doing, and he's running it, or with his partners. I'm not sure how the structure is at Skybound, but he's running a very tight publication studio there. And Eric Larson, who's publishing what he wants to do because he wants to do it. Mm-hmm. There's a reason why Savage Dragon's still going. It's because Eric Larson still wants to do it, and that's amazing. I love that part.
Yeah, that's some determination.
Yeah. And there's been some time. Every time I pick it up, because I go back at it every couple of years, and I'll pick up like a year's worth at a go. and he's still doing the same energy. I have no idea where it is now. I think it's been about 2 years since I've taken a stab at it. But last I heard, he was like doing just bizarro,
Yeah.
almost insular takes on like what the Savage Dragon universe is. It's has no connection to anything else. It's just I think it's the Sun. I believe last thing I read, it was like starring the Sun, and the original Savage Dragon was a bad guy. And so I read this and I went, wow, this is a guy who is absolutely committed to what he's doing. And I think it's a little bit like Dave Sim and Cerebus. Well, without all the
Hateful misogyny. Yeah.
yeah,
But it's kind of
and
like
the bizarro take on the Quran and all that. Yeah,
yeah.
I'm a little envious of that, and I would like to think that the whole image thing gave Eric license to do that. I mean, I want Eric Larson to be doing Savage Dragon as long as he's happy doing it, and the whole image period with all that frenzy and madness has given him license to do that. So I'm really happy that it happened for that. And plus, I think now Image is probably the gold standard of creativity in comics.
Absolutely.
It's essentially the best parts of Dark Horse and Vertigo existing under one imprint.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
yeah, I love that idea though of someone getting to a point where they've been doing something for so long where they can just say, "Fuck it, I'm doing this. I'm doing what I want." You know, like I'm really doing this story for me, and if you're along for the ride, then that's cool too.
Yeah, and I firmly believe I've talked to seriously diehard Savage Dragon fans. And the weird thing is like back in the day when Image was starting, and I had friends who were like crazy for Mark Silvestri, who I still think is one of the best draftsmen in comics, and Jim Lee and Will Spertatio and Todd McFarlane and Rob Liefeld and Eric Larson. And I was looking at what Eric Larson was doing, and I went, if they put the weight of the Image universe on him to actually structure it, it would have been a more solid superhero universe. Everyone else had no idea what they were doing for 1 month to the next. Eric Larson did. And I'm not doing that to blow smoke. I mean, I don't think I'm gonna work with Eric anytime in the near future. But I mean, it's so clear he had an idea of what he was doing. Where Mark Silvestri is like, well, I was about to quit comics. Maybe I'll do an X-Men riff, right? And Jim Lee was like, well, I was doing X-Men. I'm gonna do an X-Men riff. And Will Spertatio goes, I like drawing really reflective things. I'm going to do a book about people who are all reflective. I mean, that was the depth of the thinking that was readily apparent at the birth of Image. It's like, well, I'm really famous for this. I'm going to keep doing that. And Eric Larson says, I've always wanted to do this, and I'm going to do it. And I think there's a qualitative difference between what Eric Larson was doing and what anyone else was doing. I mean, just look at it. What else? Spawn.
Yeah.
Spawn is it. And I think, did Spawn have a relaunch?
Yeah. Well, it's so funny because just this past week for Free Comic Book Day, it was like one of the free comics was like a reprint of Spawn #1 or something. And I remember somebody making a joke like, yeah, we've already got plenty of those in the quarter bin. You know, we give them away for free anyway.
That's sad. That's almost sad. But it's true. It's true though, because really, I mean, it's like, sure. So what? I bet you could buy X-Men 1, like the Jim Lee.
Oh, yeah.
Adjectiveless #1. You could probably buy that in dollar bins somewhere if they haven't been pulped. I mean, it's like, sure, it sold, 7 million copies, but it probably only had about 100,000 people reading it. And I don't think the numbers of readers are that off today than they were in the early 90s.
You think? Yeah, that's because I mean everybody talks about like, oh, comics are selling so much less, but obviously like the reason they were selling more is because it was that weird speculator market.
Yeah. And well, okay, so there's a structure. This is a great subject because a lot of people don't talk about this. I rarely see this discussed anywhere. There was a structure in the 90s that guaranteed the sale of comic books that would never be read. And it was publisher would send out this is what we're publishing in July. And it would go to a dozen, almost 20 distributors all across the world. And these distributors would have accounts with all their local stores. Some of these stores would have accounts with multiple distributors if they overlap. So if they sold out of this book, I could get it from this guy.
Right, because
Right.
Diamond wasn't the only game in town at the time. Right.
Right. So what would happen is every distributor would order with a little bit of overstock in mind in case there was reorders.
Hmm.
So there'd be this cushion. There'd be this over order for every single thing that Marvel published. Right. It would sit there. It would be the distributor would buy. Let's say the distributor got from all its retailers 100,000 copies orders of X-Men 1.
Hmm.
Right. They'd go, that's a hot selling book. I'm going to order 120,000 copies because I'm making enough money off 100,000 copies of X-Men. I can still make money if I have the 20,000. If I sell more of those 20,000, I'm even better off.
Yeah, yeah.
Right. Okay. But then you go step down to the comic level where every comic shop's saying, well, I know I can sell 20 copies of X-Men 1, but if I might be able to sell 25 or maybe 30. And if it's a really hot seller, those back issues might double, triple, or quadruple in value.
Hmm.
So you know what? I'm going to order 50. Right? Thinking, okay, I know I'm going to sell 20.
Hmm.
It's a hot book. There's a very good chance people will get excited and I'll sell 30 or 40. And then I'll have 10 copies, 5 of which I'll bag and board and put in back issues at $1 markup immediately.
Hmm.
And I'll have 5 more in case it really skyrockets. Right? There was this huge slush fund of unsold comics
Hmm.
that was built into the market in the 90s. So, Marvel would say we sold 250,000 copies of Glow in the Dark Ghost Rider, right? And there were only 75,000 people who enjoyed reading a Ghost Rider book, but there was a whole lot of people who thought they could sell Ghost Rider books at a markup. They would go up in value. There's always people buying, well, this is my read copy, this is my save copy. So you'd have hardcore fans, because the comics were cheaper, they would say, oh, I'm going to buy 2 copies of everything I like in case it goes up in value.
Yeah, yeah. Hmm.
Okay, and you really can't do that as much when the books are $5 a pop, but when they're $1.25, sure.
Well, I mean, I'm always so fascinated by the whole market of variant covers and like how many copies that stores have to order just to get one of the variant covers. Like that
Yeah.
seems.
Well, actually, Ahoy just had a little bit of a thing with that. We had a whole bunch of requests to do retailer exclusive covers for Second Coming #1.
Hmm.
Okay, and it was a lot of requests because a lot of companies are doing it. Like Dynamite's doing. Anyone could order their own copies, put their own cover on it, and there's a weird little for-profit aspect for it. If a store says we're going to order, 1,000 copies of this book with our exclusive cover, we know full well there's a collector market for it. So
Yeah.
whatever we don't sell in our shop, we can go on eBay and sell it at 3, 4, 5 times what we paid for it easily.
That's such a
So
weird vanity project. That's such a weird thing.
I know, and it's like I was a little weird about it, but I was getting direct requests because co-creator of the book.
Hmm.
But Ahoy looked at it, and there's additional staff pressure. Like you need someone who has to spend the time to place the orders, track everything, make sure everything gets shipped and everything. And they're still a very small company. It's being very smart about how they're hiring and expanding staff. And they looked at it and said, there's a risk of us screwing up here. We might be stretching ourselves too thin. So they decided not to do exclusives.
Mm-hmm. I don't blame them.
Yeah, I don't either. I mean, I would have loved to have, all these comics showing up with extra covers by me. I mean, who doesn't want to draw more covers?
Right.
But I understand. I'd much rather have the company do the job they're supposed to do well, rather than the side gig that makes a little bit extra money and mess everything up.
Hmm. Yeah. No, I'm with you.
I think that's key. I think some of the more established companies,
Hmm.
they have people on staff who are actually doing this. I wouldn't be surprised if there's 1 or 2 people whose job is entirely organizing the retailer or whoever exclusive covers for some of these publishers. Boom, Dynamite, DC, I believe, has like 1 cover they allowed to do as retailer exclusives a month. Marvel, I think, is tied to orders or something. So there's a whole bunch of different mechanisms in place that these companies are using for these exclusives, which is I guess adjacent to the variant covers you were talking about, with the order 50 copies of this book, and then you can have then you can get 10 copies of this book.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And that feels a little dodgy to me. And I know there's retailers out there who can make it work because they do it. But that to me feels like, well, they're trying to think of a good analogy. It's like when the cow stopped giving milk, so you decide, well, let's just put it into like an apple press and see if we can get some more out. Right?
Yeah, let's talk about Second Coming. So so Second Coming has been full of hype and controversy. And it's your political satire about Jesus Christ living with a superhero. You and Mark Russell, who has been doing so amazingly well with Snagglepuss and Flintstones and the great sort of stuff. The books that he's been putting out that sort of skirted that line of like real serious social issue stuff and satire. So you guys are putting this out through Vertigo, and then they rejected it, and now you've been picked up by Ahoy.
Well, I wouldn't say they rejected it. The real take that we get from this is that Dan DiDio was willing to go to the mat to publish the book.
Mm-hmm.
But he has a boss, and it's Warner Brothers. And Warner Brothers didn't want the controversy.
Well, you were on Fox News. They're on Fox News talking about it.
Yeah, there's an aspect of corporate America that does not know how to deal with right wing outrage.
Yeah, how did that feel? I mean, Fox News was talking about one of your books.
Well, I don't watch Fox. I mean, I mean, apart from Shepard Smith and some of the actual news guys, it's a clown car of bad ideas.
Mm-hmm.
So I actually was laughing about it. I'm just like thinking it's great. I mean, it's actually free press. I mean, it's and it's I was like, okay, great. And then more other like Breitbart News and some other people got on top of it, and there was a petition. And I was hearing rumors that there were people who were planning to go on ship day and grabbing every copy on the stand so no one else could get a copy, and then burn them.
Once again, that brilliant idea of let's buy all of this thing we're allegedly offended by.
Yeah, and then destroy it. And I was actually thinking, just basically saying, it's like, all right, whoever sends me the video of the most books being burned will get a free commission of the character of their choice.
Which would be Jesus. They love him.
There we go. They'll drop Captain America's ass. And then Warner Brothers said, well, okay, you know what? We're taking a look at this, and this might be risque, so we're going to change this. And you know what? This might get people. And it was people not in publishing. And this is the key thing. People in publishing are generally pretty fucking brave.
Mm-hmm.
And you kind of have to be, because you have to have the courage of your convictions. Like if I've seen over the years people attacking Dan DiDio again and again and again. And I've agreed with some of his decisions, what he did with DC. I disagree with others. But when you're operating at that level, you have to believe in what you're doing, because otherwise everything's going to fall apart. Dan DiDio believed in our book. And he took a lot of heat from Warner Brothers for it. And he was essentially forced to capitulate to some changes. And when it comes right down to it, he believed in the actual book, not in just publishing something and making some money off of it. So when it came down to Warner Brothers was going to ask for more changes, that we're going to fundamentally change what we're going to do with the book, Dan DiDio gave it back to us.
That's amazing. That's great.
So when people say, well, DC canceled it. They didn't really cancel it. They gave it back to us so they wouldn't mess with it. They want it to be what it is. And in fact, it's better now. And it's only better now because of DC giving it back to us. We brought on board an out of this world artist to do the scene set on Earth. And that wouldn't have happened if we kept going at Vertigo. There wasn't the mental time or space to actually think about, well, what if we do this? It was literally the week after DC gave us the book back that it was Kurt Swan's birthday.
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of people were sharing a lot of Kurt Swan art. And in the back of my head, I was thinking, like, you know what? It'd be really cool if, because I got this kind of like scritchy, scratchy, over-rendered Gustav Doré, Bill Sienkiewicz inspired art style.
Mm-hmm.
And bringing that to the superhero stuff, it was okay. It worked as a comic book. But I'm going, it doesn't look like, a different place. It's like I drew a city on Earth and I drew a city in heaven, and it looks different, but it didn't feel different. And I thought, what if we brought on board a guy who had a more superhero take in terms of his line and his drawing that would still work with me? And we did, and we're going to be making an announcement about that soon. But so we got this amazing A-list talent who's going to be drawing the scene set on Earth.
That's awesome. That's a wonderful idea.
Yeah, and that gives me space. Like, I'm laying out the guy can do the job. He's that good. But I'm laying it up so he understands, so we can go hand in hand on some of the pages. There's going to be, cutscenes between heaven and earth. And so I'm laying everything out so everything works. And I'll be like, if there's a panel set in heaven, I'll be drawing that panel. He'll be drawing everything else. If there's one panel set on earth, he's drawing that one panel. So it's going to be nuts for Ahoy's accounting for paying us. But doing that also gives me more room. I'm going to be coloring all the scenes set in heaven and in the biblical flashbacks. And I have a pretty time-intensive approach to coloring. And so having that other guy on board, not only do we have this amazing other artist working on the project who brings a great visual sensibility to the scene set on Earth, the scene set on heaven or in biblical flashbacks are going to have more of this kind of like glowy, overly painterly style that I bring when I color.
Nice.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
So there's no other book in the market that looks like this. So.
Mm-hmm. It's also interesting to me because Vertigo had no problem putting out Punk Rock Jesus. I don't remember any scandal around that with Sean Gordon Murphy.
I think the big thing about that is as pretty as the book was, it really didn't deal with anything overtly religious in a way that mattered.
Mm-hmm.
It was honestly just I don't want to come across as slagging because I think his work is very, very, very pretty. But in terms of controversy, I think the controversy began and ended with the title of the book.
Yeah. But a lot of times that's enough for people, Well,
that's just it. I mean, but I mean, it has a story point that's essentially a liftoff from Preacher. The bloodline of Jesus type of thing, but they do it with cloning. But the rest of it all is pretty just standard science fiction shoot 'em up.
Mm-hmm.
And that's perfectly fine. I don't want to, again, I want to be very careful. I'm not trying to badmouth. I got a nice, wonderful black and white copy of the book sitting here in my studio somewhere. But Second Coming's actually, we're taking Christ, which is something that's always going to piss off Christians. We're taking Christ and we're actually putting him in his same moral context in today's world. And modern Christians don't look well once you put them under that lens.
Yeah. Meanwhile, the fact that you're showing him as being heroic for having empathy, Yeah.
Yeah. It's and that's just it. It's like Mark and I both know that we're dealing fairly with Christ from the Bible, and we're taking what he said as a guide for what we're doing with him in this comic. And as a result, the Christians are running around assuming we're going to make fun of Christ, and it's like you would have to change who Christ was to make fun of him in a meaningful way,
Mm-hmm.
right? And it's just the way comedy and satire works. You satirize the people who are bloated with their own self-importance. Christ wasn't that. You satirize the people whose power, overreaches their grasp. That's certainly not Jesus Christ. You satirize people who are incredibly selfish on any aspect, and that's clearly not the guy who said, "Okay, you know what? I guess I got to die to save humanity."
Yeah, you're punching up.
Yeah, I mean, it's so what we're going after is going over like, okay, what exactly value do superheroes bring to our world? Right. So we're looking at that. What value does organized church protesting aspects of moral progressivism in our world? Okay, what good does that serve? I mean, it's the things the right wing people don't want us to talk about with Christ. That's really an issue here. It's they want to scream about abortion, but ultimately, when it comes right down to it, what did Jesus say about abortion?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Nothing. And in the Bible, if you read the Bible, there's aspects of the Bible that actually say, yeah, abortion's okay. I mean, if your wife got a baby from someone you don't like, you make her get rid of it. I mean, that's in the Bible.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I mean, it's we're living in a world where a significant portion of the population has a belief of the way the world should work that has no relationship with how the way the world is working, and they're fighting about it. And those are the same type of people who are outraged over the very idea of a book starring Jesus Christ that isn't going to feed into their narrative. I mean, if it was that guy who does those horrible Trump paintings,
Oh God.
I think his name's
Yeah.
McNaughton or McLaughton or something.
Mm-hmm.
They're god awful, literally god awful paintings with such a weirdly distorted view of what America is. I mean, if we did that kind of Jesus came down, he's beating up on liberals, they'd be like, oh yeah, do that book, right? But it's like Jesus is coming down and saying, you know what? Maybe instead of like giving all your money to the pastor who already has a private jet, maybe we should give some money to the poor. They're like, oh my God, how dare you? How dare you actually use what Jesus said and did? How dare you, filthy liberals?
Well, now you're kind of in the company of people like Martin Scorsese and Kevin Smith as being maligned for things before they've come out.
I don't think I'm worthy, but I'll happily. Well, definitely not worthy of being Scorsese's company. Maybe Kevin Smith. We
Yeah.
both got beards and got too much weight. Although he's lost a lot eating potatoes.
Yes.
Um, yeah, it's and the thing is, I think the biggest part of the outrage was because it was coming from DC, and Trump was looking bad in the news that week, and you look for something to get outraged. It really is. There's a specific amount. They need to constantly feed the anger.
Yeah, I mean, is there a week where there isn't a need for a distraction? You know,
Yeah,
every week they need a distraction.
it's well, they're doing it so well. I mean, there's people who actually are believing the lies wholeheartedly now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's it's terrifyingly sad that this multi-million-dollar report comes back saying, look at all this obstruction of justice, all this criminal activity from the president, but I wasn't given leeway to actually pursue it in the way that I would if he was a private citizen. And then people are running around saying, oh no, he did nothing then.
Yeah, yeah. Oh.
It's the weird belief that if you don't get caught, you didn't commit a crime.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's more true in America than anywhere else in the world right now.
Yeah.
And any civilized part of the world. It's I mean, it's terrifying to think that okay, we this guy has done these terrible things, and people are saying, well, he represents me, even though he doesn't really. But because I voted for him, I'm so bought into him, I'm going to keep saying he didn't do anything wrong, even though it's clear he's a criminal.
Yeah, yeah, and everyone around him is a criminal,
Yeah,
and they're blatantly showing that. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And there's a weird level of gamesmanship to the political process, and it's affecting the rest of the world. I mean, there was a great little fictionalized film about Brexit, starring Benedict Unpronounceable, and it was about the main guy they brought on board to sell Brexit, and he didn't even think for 1 minute about the consequences of it.
Mm.
He saw it as an abstract exercise in selling this thing, and in the aftermath of Britain is screwed.
Mm-hmm.
And this is separate from the conversation whether or not the the whole deal with the EU was actually a fair one for the average person living in the EU. It was great for the corporations. It wasn't great from the people, but Brexit's worse.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's where we're living in on a daily basis here everywhere in the world now, where we have politicians who don't care about the truth, who don't really care about the people who voted for them, and more operated in, well, can we win?
Mm-hmm.
Not a happy place. So I'm just drawing, Jesus Christ hanging around with superhero and Game of Thrones characters.
Let's get to this Game of Thrones conversation. So now you had done this amazing piece of Lyanna Mormont,
Well, thank you.
and
Thank you.
I loved it. I thought it was great. I mean, I think a lot of your stuff is great, but this obviously resonated with the zeitgeist the morning after the. Okay, people, spoilers. I will let's say spoilers start now about Game of Thrones.
We're 3 weeks in and the show that's readily available in any platform online.
Yeah, but I don't understand. I don't know. I'm so confused about spoiler culture now. Like, what you are not allowed. Like, I mean, obviously with that Avengers thing, it's like, oh, there's gonna be a 2-week moratorium, and people like threatening people online about how, and it just seems so silly to me. I haven't even seen Endgame yet, and I'm okay, and I know what happens, and I'm okay. You know, but
Well, I've seen it twice now, and
uh-huh.
it's better the second time.
I'm sure it's good. I mean, I'll
So
get
that
there.
I,
I've
I
just been
saw it
busy.
fully spoiled. I
Yeah,
knew everything that was happening, and I enjoyed it more. So I
right.
think the whole notion of spoilers is, again, just an excuse to get angry.
Yeah, I think it is. It really is. Also, I was so bewildered, and the thing I don't know, it kept angering me. Everybody making such a big deal about, oh my God, this movie is 3 hours. You better hold yourself from having to use the bathroom, and oh, I better know when I can use the bath. Like there was so much talk about pissing related to this fucking Avengers movie. I love Once Upon a Time in America. I love The Godfather. I love movies that are epic, epic films. I never once think, I'll go see revivals of these films. I never once think like, oh man, I better not upset people by having to get up and use the bathroom. Who cares? Who
Well, actually, in
cares?
certain parts of the world, they still do intermissions in movies.
Yeah, yeah. You remember there used to be this intermissions all the time. Jeremiah Johnson, like films
Yeah,
like that, epic, Cleopatra, Gone with the Wind. All these films had intermissions. I think even
Hateful Eight had
Hateful
intermissions.
Eight had an intermission.
Yeah,
So yeah,
and honestly, I honestly, I cannot believe that there wasn't some pressure somewhere to say, let's put a break in, allow people to go grab a pee break,
hmm
go refill their drinks after,
right.
right? Sell more concessions.
hmm
There must have been some sort of conversation like that going on.
Especially a
But
movie people are bringing their children to.
yeah, and because I honestly, it's like all I did. This was my prep. I didn't drink for an hour before I saw the movie, and before I went in, I took a leak.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. I see people making jokes about wearing diapers. I'm going, oh my God, are we living in a completely physically and emotionally incontinent culture now?
I mean, sometimes I think about wearing a diaper if I'm running a half marathon or a marathon, but that's the only time I would ever think about that.
I know and I saw it twice and I didn't have that issue at all. I think what it is everyone's so used to every movie now. The movies are getting shorter.
Are they?
Yeah, they are.
I feel like so many
The,
movies are
the
just like
average
weirdly long.
the average dramatic movie
hmm
was 2 hours long, 2 hours 20 minutes on average. Back
That's
in the 80s, 70s and 80s.
yeah, that's normal. Yeah.
Comedies were always around 90 minutes.
hmm
And that was just a truism in Hollywood. You're doing a comedy, 90 pages of script, you got a comedy. You got writing a drama, aim for 120 pages. You go over maybe. Okay, if it's really good, you can go over.
hmm
But it's like people would be like, studios would bitch if the movie was like 134 minutes long. But if it was a good movie, they let it go.
Sure.
And now a lot of action movies, a lot of drama movies that are coming out are under 2 hours.
hmm
And it's just the big epics that are getting longer.
But it feels like we have more epics. It feels like every superhero film is like the tantamount importance. I just I don't know. Not everything.
Well,
When you think that everything is this epic and important, none of it is.
well, Ragnarok was only about 100 minutes, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. But once again, that
Uh,
was light. That was.
that was lighter ones, but I think the John Wick movies are all, I don't know about the third one, but I know the first two were both under 2 hours.
And those are
Uh,
perfect. They're
and those are
perfect.
great movies. And I, my approach to this is the right length of a movie is the movie where you don't end up looking at your watch.
Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right. So if it literally goes till 3 hours and I'm engaged for the full 3 hours, it's the perfect length.
Mm-hmm. But I mean,
If it's
Aquaman
Star
was
Trek
way
the
too
motion
long.
picture and I'm dozing off, maybe you can trim some of that movie.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Aquaman was way too long. That movie's like over 2 hours or something.
I know I had a good nap during that movie.
Yeah.
It was. I mean, honestly, this is something that started happening to me about maybe 10 years ago.
Hmm.
I love going to the movie. I love going to the movies. I love sitting in the theater and watching a really good movie. And when I'm engaged in a story, it's great. But as soon as the movie turns off its brain, or at least stops trying to turn my brain on, I check out.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it really is. It's like I'm sitting in a comfy chair. I love going to VIP seating for movies. I sit in a comfy chair. I'm watching this. I'm sitting in the dark. I probably worked extra long hours so I can take the time off to come see the movie. And
Hmm.
it's like if it's just mindless, stupid fighting or just special effects happening for no good reason other than, ooh, look, bright lights. I'll take a nap.
Yes. Yeah. I
I'll
do that all the
happily take a
time.
nap. I'll happily take a nap.
Yeah.
I mean, Aquaman was I think I slept during the wrong parts of Aquaman. I was awake through the first part with badly de-aged Nicole Kidman and that New Zealand actor.
Right. Right. Once Were
Uh,
Warriors guy. Yeah.
yeah, the One for Warriors guy.
Everybody's
And
like,
I
"Oh,
was
he's
awake
Boba
through all
Fett or
of that
something." I'm
stuff.
like, "No, he's Once Were Warriors guy."
Yeah. I was like awake through all that, and I was like, oh God, this is terrible. This is so badly written. And then I dozed off during, like, I think the sharks with lasers and the scenes in the trench. So apparently I missed all the good parts of Aquaman.
It's so
Uh,
funny as in the seating that I was at, in the viewing I was at, the guy next to me, when spoiler alert, when Nicole Kidman comes back and they reveal that she wasn't dead, this guy starts bawling, like crying, a man just openly weeping over the return of Nicole Kidman. And all I could think was, man, I really hope he's going through like an emotional breakup or something. I really hope there's a deeper emotional reason for this man's crying than just Nicole Kidman.
well, poor Tom Cruise. Imagine what he. Um, no, I wept a number of times during Endgame.
Right, but not during Aquaman.
No, I mean, I mean, if at the end of, I'm almost going to go into a big spoiler. I won't do it. I'm sure there have been a lot of women who wept if Aquaman did it with Jason Momoa looking like Thor. Um,
That's the other thing. Like the heated think pieces about whether or not it's appropriate to make fun of Thor being fat and like, oh no, it's really meaningful to a lot of people that Thor is fat and blah blah blah. Like I just can't wade through all of these opinions about this, you know?
we're living in a culture where everyone thinks that. See, I grew up being a huge fan of Christopher Hitchens, even though I disagreed with him a lot. I was a fan of his approach to thinking. More so Stephen Fry,
Mm-hmm.
and very, very brilliant men who had no time at all for outrage culture. And outrage culture exists on the left and the right.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's so I have no time for it at all. A fat joke is a great joke if it's funny, right? And if someone gets their, panties in a twist, male or female panties, I don't care. If someone gets their panties in a twist because, oh my God, you're fat shaming. I said, no, if the joke's in the abstract, you're not mocking someone specifically, and it's a fat joke and people laugh, it works.
Well, it's like we
Because,
were saying about the idea of punching up versus punching
yeah,
down. I mean, the idea
yeah,
is Thor is still a hero. You know, that's the whole thing. It doesn't.
yeah,
Yeah, I mean, and that's what Rocket Raccoon does is make
yeah,
fat jokes. So,
yeah. Well, I mean, there was a lot of good jokes. It's like, do you know what's coursing through my? I don't want to. There's so many good jokes, and the wonderful thing is I saw someone complaining about Thor, saying he's the one Marvel character, and this is my standing up for Thor, because Thor is one of my favorite characters. It's one of the characters of Marvel said, "Hey, you want to draw Thor?" I go, "Yes." Um, one of the things I like about Thor in the Marvel universe that's unlike pretty much any of the other characters, he started with a family, and the family dynamic and drama became part of his character.
Hmm.
Okay, with Tony Stark and Iron Man, he has a family history that gets touched on, but it's not really about him. Okay, it reflects on him, but it's not about him.
Hmm.
Thor's relationship with his dad, his stepbrother, and his mother and his friends is very, very key to Thor, and then it makes the situation he's in Endgame very understandable.
Hmm.
And I hope you see it, because then we can talk about it. But
I've read enough. Go on.
yeah, and Incredible Hulk doesn't have that problem. He had a girlfriend that he used to have.
Right. Well, I mean, to be fair, Thor
Um,
also has a girlfriend that
uh,
he used to have.
yeah, Captain America had a girlfriend he used to have.
Hmm.
I mean, these are issues where it's like, Thor. I mean, I think we could talk about Ragnarok.
Hmm.
It's been over a year.
Yeah.
He now no longer has his mother,
Right. Hmm.
his father, and thanks to Infinity War, his brother,
Hmm.
and then half his people,
Yeah.
which a bunch were already slaughtered by his aunt, or no, old eldest sister.
Yes. Yeah.
Right? So, I mean, no one in the Marvel universe has a shittier life than Thor.
Right. Right. And yet he's still sort of comic relief.
And the wonderful thing about it is there is a humanity that he has because he's comedic relief that puts him aside from all the other characters in Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Hmm.
I mean, you take away, again, spoiler territory,
Yeah.
you take away all of Hawkeye's family, which I think everyone knows at this point,
Uh-huh. Yeah.
and he turns into a psycho killer. You take away Thor's family, and he actually feels grief. That tells you something about those characters.
Yeah. Yeah. So
So,
yeah, so you're right, and that's super interesting. And so going back to grief and losing family and Game of Thrones.
yeah.
So
Oh, yeah.
yeah, so you did this Leanna Mormont picture,
Oh,
and
yeah.
of course, I'm sure like within 30 minutes or whatever, it immediately got picked up by one of those sketchy T-shirt sites.
Yeah, I saw two over the course of one weekend,
Yeah, yeah.
and I ended up reporting and taking them down.
Hmm. Hmm.
So it seemed to be my reporting taking them down, and I was like, well, shit. They're putting up like really like the print quality from like a screen quality JPEG is horrible,
Yeah.
right? So people are going to be buying substandard product, and I figured, well, shit. If HBO hasn't done anything, so if they're going to do that, I'd much rather point people at something and then do something good with it. So I found a shirt site, I put it up, and anything I would have raised from it would have gone to my local food bank. But luckily and happily, HBO is policing this really well. So so my shirt thing's canceled. And a lot of shirts sold in a very short period of time, which makes me wonder about, like, how many shirts were almost sold through the other sites.
Right. Well, the fascinating thing about those other sites is so many of them are like, 24-hour, like they do it quickly. And also they print them like in another country or something where the copyright rules might not apply.
Yeah,
I feel like you haven't done anything of any popularity unless you've had something ripped off by one of those shirt sites. Like it's just so commonplace for every artist now.
yeah.
Yeah.
We're living in a world where everything's content, but the people making the content everyone feels they have license to treat them with utter contempt.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I mean, someone had erased my name off the piece. They actually took the time to erase my little signature on the artwork itself to before they put it on a shirt.
Which is like, which is worse, being stupid enough to leave your signature on there, or being catty enough to erase it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's shitty.
It is. It's it comes the same as, like, I buy my music,
Hmm.
I'll listen on Spotify because I know that there's pennies making its way back to the artist. When I want to try it, whether someone, oh, you should listen to this, I'll find it on YouTube or Spotify. But if I like it, I buy the music because I know that's the only way I can be sure the person creating music I like gets money.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And there's so many people out there who say, well, if I can avoid spending a dime, yay.
Yeah.
And I think that I understand it. We're living in a world where minimum wage in the U.S. hasn't really effectively gone up in 30 years?
Yeah.
And I say effectively gone up. It hasn't kept pace with inflation by any stretch. So people have more economic pressure on them than ever before. And the idea of like, okay, well, movies, you can't not see a movie in the theater experience without paying the money for it, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you can pirate a shitty copy that someone else filmed, right? And if you're okay with that, downloading that shitty copy that someone shot with their phone, okay, then you're okay with stealing it. And it's like, well, that's crappy.
Yeah, it's so funny. I was just saying this last week about how, like, I think people that pirate comics are shitty. I think people that pirate, I think, like, people do stuff, are really, whatever. But then I have all these, like, punch cards for like, frequent buyers at coffee things. And
Yeah.
every single day, every single time I pull one of those out, I think, I need one of those little star-shaped hole punches. I need to start faking my way to get free coffee.
Coffee is not cheap.
I know. I'm such a horrible, dishonest person for thinking about that.
Well, I got to tell you, it's an interesting way that we're also living in a culture where they try and enforce loyalty by bargains.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, I live really close to a Starbucks,
Hmm.
and I had a girlfriend who was like a Starbucks fiend years ago, and it turned me into a Starbucks fiend. I love my hazelnut lattes.
Yeah.
Right? They're delicious, and it's like if I want that super spike of caffeine all at once, I'll just go for a little walk over to the Starbucks. But now when I want a coffee, I don't go to any of the other coffee shops. I look for a Starbucks, and because I got my Starbucks card,
Yeah.
and I know if I spend a certain amount of money at Starbucks, I get free coffees,
Hmm.
right? And it seems like a certain economic of style. But if I really wanted to be frugal, I just make my own coffee.
Right, of
I'd buy
course.
the
Yeah.
hazelnut syrup and make my own lattes. I can do it. But it's like, no, it's easier. It's nicer when someone makes it for me.
Well, also, it's the idea that, like, I mean, I'm out working a lot of jobs or whatever, and a lot of times I just need to kill time. I need, like, oh, I've got 20 minutes to kill or something. And that's why I buy coffee while I'm out mainly. Or I'll buy coffee like I'm walking to work and I want something hot to carry, and I know that this coffee place is within halfway to work or something. So I don't know. There's a lot of reasons why, but the one thing definitely is like I hate those people who are like, oh, you'd save so much money if you made your own coffee and put that $5 a day into the bank or something. Because really, when you break down that math, you'd have to have a huge interest rate, and it's bullshit. Like that's the avocado toast theory is not why people aren't buying houses.
No, it's a diversion. It's just like all the Trump diversions. The
Hmm.
idea that you're spending too much money on coffee is what's stopping you from buying a new car or buying a new house or doing anything else. If I spend $5 a week on coffee, right?
Hmm.
Okay, that seems like a lot of money at the end of the year. It's like $250 at the end of the year. I'm just doing quick math. Just keep it simple.
Right.
But that interest rate's not going to really accrue to much anything at the end of the year. But at the end of 10 years, oh my God, it's a significant amount of money. All right. Oh my God, if I save $250 a year with compound interest over 10 years, it becomes something significant. But the problem is, what did you do for your pleasure during that time?
Right. Right.
What did you do to treat yourself during that time?
Hmm.
What did you do to actually say, you know what? I've had a hard fucking week. I don't get paid enough. I put in too many hours. Family stress is crazy. Oh, good. Here's a coffee. And you get that moment of like, yeah, right?
Yes.
And,
Yes.
and that moment of yeah cost you $5.
Hmm.
And boy, was it fucking worth it.
Yes.
And you see these people and you see these couples that they paid off all their student loans and they bought a house and retired by 30. And you look at how they lived their life and this hardcore subsistence living, life of ramen and deprivation of anything worthwhile for 10 years to get to that point makes you think these are people who are not happy people.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? They're money obsessed sons of bitches who have no joy in their life. I don't want to know these people. Right? I'd much rather know someone who's struggling with their bills a little bit more and can really enjoy it when you buy a slice of cake at a restaurant.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, now we've gone off on that tangent, the treat yourself tangent. We deserve that coffee.
Yeah. Yes, we do.
So going back to Game of Thrones.
Oh yeah, right. Yeah, so HBO took down the Redbubble shirt, and I'm actually quite relieved by it because
Yeah.
I felt weird putting it up as a shirt.
Mm-hmm. So Mark Russell had a good tweet yesterday where he was talking about the idea of how people now are more fans of being in a fandom than they are than the things themselves.
Yes,
You
yes,
know, and
I
that's
saw
a
that. Yeah.
thing. That's a thing that drives me insane. That's a thing that I think about constantly. You know, because like everybody's like, especially these past few episodes of Games of Thrones, everybody's like, oh, it's fan service. Oh, blah blah blah. Oh, they're not doing this thing that I wanted them to, etc. And it just, I just wish people would just give things time and let it wrap up. You know?
Well, we now live. My God, we live in so many different worlds. I keep saying, "Oh, we now live in this world." I noticed for a while where criticism has been democratized,
Mm-hmm.
where anyone's opinion is equally valid.
Yeah.
So I was sometimes when I'm drawing, I'll let YouTube just scroll from video to video to video.
Oh, I
Watching
couldn't do
something I
that.
like. And so there's one guy who's doing an attack on the episode 3 of Game of Thrones.
Mm-hmm.
And he didn't attack the video quality, so he clearly watched it with a decent TV with the right settings. But he's attacking the story, and he was talking about, like you said, fan service. And it would have been better if they did it my way.
Yeah, yeah. Who are you? Who are any of us?
I mean, if it wasn't now, I had the emotional roller coaster of that episode. I let myself be brought into it.
Mm-hmm.
It had its moments, and if I looked at it, if I were creating it, it would have been different.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if the audience would have agreed with me that it would be better. And this is a hard thing. I see some other creative professionals doing that criticism too, and I think they need to check themselves a little bit. Benioff and Weiss are adapting George R. R. Martin's story before it's been published at this point.
Which is crazy, which is a whole bizarre thing. I think this is like the first time that's ever been done.
I think so too.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a little strange. But they have the outline. So they're actually moving in the direction of George R. R. Martin's story's finale as best they can within the parameters of what they have to work with.
Yeah. This is not an easy thing. Like, this is crazy.
No, it's literally crazy.
And also,
and they have the constraints of budget,
mm-hmm.
cast, time, money, all the things that you have to never necessarily deal with. And I'm thinking, if at the end of it, I can say I enjoyed that, or that was worth my time, they did their job well.
Mm-hmm.
So for everyone else to come back and start, cramping all over it because, oh my God, it didn't satisfy me to my particular needs. That the deep level of arrogance that my creative impulses are so significantly better than people who actually make a living at it.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And it's so, yeah, there's one really, I couldn't even stand the guy's voice. So he's like, well, if they did it my way, this would have worked better and this would have worked better. And I'm going, oh God, shut your fucking hole.
Like, who are these people? Who are these people that think that their opinion is so great? They've got to get it out there. I don't know. I mean, what do I know? I have a podcast. What do I know?
Well, you're approaching this in a lot more, I guess, honest and humble way. It's when I don't like something. I think the only time I really, really dove into it was when I was talking about Man of Steel, mm-hmm. and how I felt the film completely misunderstood why Superman was important in our culture. And then someone said, well, challenge me because I enjoyed it. I said, well, it's really good that you enjoy it. That means the movie worked for you, but as a Superman fan, this is why it didn't work.
Mm-hmm.
And And the comeback was, well, the writers had to do this. I said, no, the writers don't have to do anything, right? They have to tell a good story. And what they did is they broke the rules of Superman to tell the story they wanted to tell that you enjoyed.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Whereas I would approach it, these are the rules of Superman. Now I got to make a story you can enjoy by following the rules of Superman. If you don't like the rules of Superman, then you don't like Superman. Why did you go see the movie?
Right, right. It's like the trailer for that movie Brightburn or whatever.
Yeah.
I I'm like, man, this is just a movie for people who somehow felt like Man of Steel wasn't dark enough. You know, like it's a
Well,
movie about Superman
yeah,
for people who hate Superman.
it really is. It's like, it's almost like, in the cinematic universe, Bruce Wayne said, well, I want everyone to hate Superman, so I'm going to make a little fan film. This is a Superman story. He's dangerous. Let's kill him. The world of comics fandom has always had a problem with hope.
Mm-hmm.
Look at how quickly Watchmen and Dark Knight became accepted as the model to do stories.
Yeah, well, I mean, look at the career of Mark Miller. You know, that's a lot
Yeah,
of
well,
that.
the weird thing is I feel okay. I'm gonna defend Mark Millar here a bit,
Okay.
because some of his pieces have been about nothing but hope. His Flash Gordon riff.
Okay, Huck.
Huh.
All right,
No,
Huck
no,
was good.
that's another Superman riff. That's God, what's it called again? Starlight.
Oh, I
It's
forget.
it's 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 basically Flash Gordon has his adventures and retires on Earth as a girlfriend. But then as an old man, the aliens come back and say, we need your help again.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And it's beautifully drawn. It's drawn by one of these European artists who just draws everything well. And it was just such a good story. He's a good storyteller, and he knew what he needed to, and this is the Mark Millar touch. He knows exactly how to put together a story that everyone's going to be excited about.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like Kingsman, it's James Bond with like a young punk as becoming the next James Bond. That's a brilliant take. It's so
It's great
simple,
in
and
theory.
everyone gets
Yeah.
it. Everyone gets it right off the bat. Oh, I get that point.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas, like, what if Batman was the bad guy, Nemesis? Right? I mean, he's his Miller World thing is just a series of just brilliant takes on things that we already took for granted. I mean, Magic Order is essentially, what if the world of Harry Potter was full of like real people with just all the same petty family bullshit that we're all dealing with already, right? Um, it's so, but he will go to very very dark places, but he's also very capable. I think he gets knocked on because of Civil War more than anything else, because that was such a dark thing. Um, but he almost predicting the political culture we're in now, where it's like it's not just disagreement, it's war when it's a political issue.
Mm-hmm.
So, but other than that, yeah, it's yeah, it's like I don't need to see another. Oh, how dark can we go with this character take because of Dark Knight? I don't need to see another apocalyptic vision that's riffing on Watchmen. God, do I not need to see DC stop doing Watchmen riffs?
Or the
Uh,
HBO series.
well, okay, that might be different. I don't like shutting the door before something comes out because that's going to Watchmen specifically as a source. But DC absorbing Watchmen into its continuity means that all that statement, all that the actual intellectual voice behind Watchmen is been completely blown apart.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Watchmen was ultimately saying that people with all this power can't be trusted, and it was a really good argument for that, right? I mean, the
Yeah.
existence of Dr. Manhattan warps the world till it brings it to nuclear destruction, and the crazy obsessive genius solution for that is to kill a city. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Let's kill a city and make everyone think it's freaking aliens to bring about peace. I mean, it was such an absurdist, wonderful deconstruction of the notions of superheroes that needed to stand on its own. For DC to bring it in, it's basically saying, okay, well, we understand that superheroes are terrible, but we can make money off them. So we're gonna put Rorschach running around with Doctor Manhattan and Ozymandias next to Batman and Supergirl.
Yeah.
It's not a good take in my mind.
Speaking of good takes, though, we had talked earlier. We were talking about like Image and the things that are coming out from Image, and you'd mentioned you just read Little Bird.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes,
man, that is so good. That
it
book
really
is so
is.
good. Yeah, Ian Bertram is tremendous. He's killing that. That's so interesting. His style is so Mobius-esque, Mobius-y.
Yeah, it has that wonderful bits of. Uh, it's almost like the bastard love child of one of the best manga artists in Mobius.
Hmm.
And I love it. I mean, because you can really draw. Like, there's a lot of people who are doing like stylistic riffs on Mobius or manga, but they can't draw. They're just putting on like the decoration. This guy can really draw, and he can really tell a story, and the coloring's really solid, and the story's really good, and it just flows so well. I like it. It's a nice big chunk of comics in one issue. I think
Yes,
it's like
yeah.
30 pages an issue,
Yeah.
and I think they're on a quarterly publishing schedule too.
Oh, uh-huh.
Uh, I'm not sure. Maybe it's because I only just found issue one, and I understand issue two is already out.
Yes.
Uh, so yes, I'm a big fan of people taking a slightly different approach to how they're telling the story and how they're delivering the story.
Right.
And yeah,
Yeah, because this may or may not be sort of an unreliable narrator thing. Like, we don't really know what the story is with the girl and with the flashbacks about her mother and how that ties in with this sort of religious overlord. Like there's a lot of things that may or may not be true about the story itself that are really cool.
yeah, I like the unreliable narrator.
Hmm.
In fact, since he died, Gene Wolfe, the possibly one of America's greatest fantasy writers.
Uh-huh.
He passed away recently, and inspired me to go back and reread his Shadow of the Torturer, called Claude the Conciliatory. Basically, I think it's called the Book of the New Sun.
Yeah,
Is
that's
the
right. I did. I read the first one of those. Yeah, yeah.
and so I'm rereading that,
Hmm.
and for anyone who hasn't read it, it's an alternate reality-ish fantasy thing. So it's got this Dunsany type feel for like this quasi Italian medieval world,
Hmm.
but it's got science fiction elements and everything going on as well. And the character right off the bat says, "I have perfect recall. I remember everything." Um, but he doesn't have perfect recall. As you read the series, you realize he's either intentionally misremembering things or he's lying.
Hmm.
And it's a wonderful little bit to read in there where it's like, okay, so right off the bat you're supposed to say, okay, everything he says is true because he has perfect recall, but okay, this guy might be lying. And why is he lying? And that becomes part of the narrative. When the narrator isn't just telling you the story, when the narrator, what he experiences, how she goes through things, how she presents things, becomes part of the story. You get that deeper level of narrative that a lot of people just don't get. They just tell the story. And I think a good example of that is Last Jedi,
Hmm.
where you had three takes on what happened between Luke and Kylo or
Yeah.
Ben, and yeah, you pretty much have to decide that the middle is probably the most likely. And there's people who are angry that they have to make a decision like that.
Right, but it's that
And that
Rashomon. It's
tells
like,
you,
yeah, it's that
yeah,
classic Rashomon telling.
yeah, and that tells you where we get when people think that their opinion isn't, as audience, is more important than the opinion of the people who created the work.
Yeah.
And that goes back to the Game of Thrones, like with fan culture, where it's like, this isn't making me happy on every level that I anticipated being happy for. Therefore, my version's better. It's a bad take. It's like, okay, this is the story they told me. I feel unsatisfied. This is why I feel unsatisfied. Is a better take.
Yes. Hmm.
Okay, you can come back and say, I feel unsatisfied that Luke wasn't the hero. I hoped he would be last we saw him.
Yeah, that's valid. Yeah.
Okay, I walked into it, and this is interesting because I actually remember a conversation. Eric Canetti used to stream on Twitch, and we had this long conversation while he was drawing, and everyone was talking about what our anticipation was for Last Jedi before it came out. And I said, well, I'd be really, really, really sad if Luke just picks up being a hero after all this time.
Mm-hmm.
And then I had to defend that opinion, saying that, okay, he was a farm boy whose family was slaughtered, got thrown right into the middle of a war, found out the biggest villain in the universe as he understood it was his father, and his mentor had lied to him.
Mm-hmm.
Then his following and watching his mentor get murdered by his father, then finding out that his next mentor was just going to die.
Yes.
Right? Gets grievously wounded by his father. Finds out the girl he's hot for is his sister. Watches millions of people die. Then essentially has a near-death fight to the death with his father. Sees his father redeemed, but then die. And the war's over, apparently.
Yeah, he's going to be a little cynical.
Well, not even necessarily be cynical. Like, he's going to be a mess.
Yeah, there's a little PTSD going, yeah.
Yeah, we're going to have some PTSD. We're going to have a whole bunch of other issues. How's he going to deal with that?
Yeah.
We haven't seen him given anything to any sort of emotional or mental equipment other than now he's a Jedi to deal with deep emotional trauma and that level of chaos. And then we see the result. Well, he wasn't really properly trained. I mean, we have the new movies from the first trilogy, the Phantom Menace and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
We have those that deepen Jedi lore in a way that no one really liked, but made perfect sense for the next series of movies, which said, you know what, the Jedi were assholes.
Yeah. And this is why Rogue One is the best. Rogue One is the best because it's like, yeah, the rebellion did some dirty stuff, you know?
Yeah. And the thing of it is we're in a very different time politically than when Star Wars originally was created. You can't tell the exact same type of approach to stories that Star Wars did and expect to have the reception with an audience that it did in the 70s.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, we're 50 years away. And you have to have more realism and more depth to your characters now, because otherwise it's just garbage. You're throwing garbage out. And it's a strange thing. We're living in a different world, and people who are so bound by I've called it before toxic nostalgia.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's very much. I think that drives so much of the hatred towards media these days. That I would do it better. I hate that because this isn't salving my own personal wounds with this character. That's where Gamergate and Comicsgate comes from. That whole notion of like, I can't have any art that exists that may disagree with my opinion, especially if it's something I once had affection for.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Mm-hmm.
And it's a terrible thing, and it's not coming from anyone who's caught up in the I guess the waves of toxic nostalgia is not coming at anything from a good place. And I think a good indication of how bad things were with Comicsgate is when it was very, very quickly became clear that most of the people who were supporting Comicsgate weren't reading comics.
Yeah, yeah.
They were angry that more progressive ideals were being embraced by characters who were always progressive.
Yeah.
But these guys haven't grown up, but the comics industry has.
Yeah, the people that don't understand the metaphor of the X-Men. Yes.
Yeah. They don't understand, Captain America was fighting Nazis,
Yeah.
so he wouldn't be on your side.
Well, it's interesting. A couple weeks ago on The Good Fight, which is that CBS show that's a spinoff of The Good Wife, like they had one of their characters, he had a speech that involved like, yes, it's okay to punch Nazis, and of course now that actor is receiving a torrent of hate mail and death threats on Twitter and all these things. It's like how. I don't know. It's like why do people threaten the actors and over these things, and much less, God forbid, saying it's okay to punch Nazis. Like, when did we get to be those people? But
There was an anthology I was asked to contribute to, but I just didn't have the time. It was Always Punch Nazis, and
yes,
it was great. And there is no end to the outrage felt by people who voted for Trump against that book. Because the book made the clear point that the modern Nazis, the neo-Nazi movement in the United States, the white supremacist movement in the United States, all lined up and supported Trump.
yeah. Well, I mean, it's interesting. Growing up in the '90s, I remember there was always that skinhead fear. Like, there's
Yeah.
always the thing about like, yeah, your kids could easily, if they listen to punk rock music, they could become skinheads at any point. Like there was always that fear, like that whole thing where parents knew like skinheads are evil. If you shaved your head and you wore those Doc Martens, you were an evil person. And now it's like it's like, when did we get to this point of not having clear black and white? Like, I don't know.
Well, I think what it is, it's a hard thing. It's a hard thing for anyone to realize they have bad thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay, a little personal here. My brother is clearly a mess. Last time I saw him, he said some things that are just blatantly racist as could be. And when I called him a racist, despite suggesting that a race war is inevitable, and if I don't watch myself, I'm going to be on the wrong side of the race war.
Oh my God.
Despite after picking me up at a convention in Winnipeg, driving me through a McDonald's drive-through, and there was a black guy standing at the drive-through because the McDonald's was closed, and he started using the N-word.
Oh.
Okay, and then he rolled down the window on my side of the car we were in, so the guy could hear him.
Oh.
But despite doing all that, he got upset when I called him a racist. He's not a racist. So this is where we at. We got the people who are embracing white supremacy and Nazi ideology, the actual idea that they are supreme to other people.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but everyone knows a racist is evil and despicable. So the issue for them isn't changing their ideology so they're no longer racist.
It's changing the terminology.
Being called a racist.
Ugh. Mm-hmm.
So if at this point, if you're still supporting Trump, you're supporting an openly racist president.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to make the decision. Are you supporting him and feeling free that, yes, you have an amount of racism you're willing to allow to get what you think politically moves forward? Or are you going to actually acknowledge, you know what, I can't support racism?
Yeah.
So I think it's perfectly fair to lump in Trump supporters with white supremacists and racists.
Yes. Yeah.
And it's like, you're going to hurt a lot of people's feelings. It's like, how dare you say I'm a racist? Well, then stop supporting a racist.
Yes. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. Tell us when Second Coming is coming out.
July 10th.
July 10th, so people can get on with this pre-ordering right now.
Yeah.
Right? All right, good.
Yeah.
So
it's in the Diamond catalog this month.
Mm-hmm.
I believe there's going to be some more media shortly showing some behind the scenes sketches, and we're going to be doing another media push when we can announce the other artists in issue 1.
Great. Well, definitely, I look forward to that. I like a lot of what Ahoy is doing. I like Captain Ginger and Bronze Age Boogie, and I think they're really a publisher that people should be watching out for right now. People should be looking out.
Wrong Earth is one of my favorite superhero books right now.
Wait, which book?
Wrong Earth.
Oh, Wrong Earth, right. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And also just to pitch, right now, as much as I like everything else Mark is writing right now,
Mhm.
What he's doing in Red Sonja is at a level that's never been handled with the character before.
Cool.
I've handed copies of Red Sonja to people who've never read it, and they're addicted.
That's
It's
great.
it's it's funny, and it's clever, and it's got action and character in it that you never would have expected on a book that was essentially chainmail bikini. I mean, it's a smart book.
Cool. Well, I like him a lot. I think, Mark Russell's definitely somebody that yeah, you can like I think you can hand Flintstones to a lot of people. I think a lot of people get into comics through reading his stuff.
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
that's good. All right.
yeah,
Yay.
yeah.
All right. So any closing words? Where can we follow you on social media?
Richard Pace on Instagram. That's
Mhm.
if you just want to see the art and you don't want to hear me bitching about everything else. If you don't mind Canadian stuff and me talking politically, Twitter is there. That's what it's for.
Mhm.
Those are the two best places to track me down. And Twitter, it's just R Pace. And again, on Instagram, it's Richard Pace.
Cool. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.